Have you ever been curious about gastric sleeve surgery and what the experience is like? Or maybe you're someone who lost weight after this procedure, but after the honeymoon phase was over, you began gaining weight back? In this week's episode, I interview Paula from my monthly mastery community. Paula came to Shift after releasing weight with the gastric sleeve, but then her weight loss came to a standstill far above her ideal weight. She realized that though the surgery shrunk her stomach, it didn't change her thinking. Come inside today's episode where Paula generously tells her story with the gastric sleeve and the need to change her thinking that followed. Did you know that our struggle with weight doesn't start with the food on your plate or get fixed in the gym? 80% of our weight struggle is mental. That's right. The key to unlocking long-term weight release and management begins in your mind. Hi there, I'm Rita Black. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, weight loss expert, best-selling author, and the creator of the Shift Weight Mastery process. And not only have I helped thousands of people over the past 20 years achieve long-term weight mastery, I am also a former weight struggler, carb addict, and binge eater. And after 2 decades of failed diets and fad weight loss programs, I lost 40 pounds with the help of hypnosis. Not only did I release all that weight, I have kept it off for 25 years. Enter the Thin Thinking podcast where you too will learn how to remove the mental roadblocks that keep you struggling. I'll give you the thin thinking tools, skills, and insights to help you develop the mindset you need, not only to achieve your ideal weight, but to stay there long term and live your best life. Sound good? Let's get started. And happy June. How are you? I want to thank all of our amazing listeners out there from all over the world. I am truly inspired by you and your comments about the show and how it's impacted you. And I love spending this time in the world of thin thinking with you. There is such a need to come back to ourselves, isn't there? I feel like the world is just like spinning faster and faster, and where all of our attention is so distracted out there and so splintered between all these things. And what I love about our time together is it is a time to come back to center, to come back to you. And I think we just need more and more of that. Just so much more. So, and the way we communicate with ourselves, it's just my sincere intention that this show is a place for that, just to get tools, inspiration, and love. And I want to address podcast topics that you would like to listen to. So please, please, please do not be shy and enter your questions or topic ideas in the show notes. There is a link for that. And thank you for your support. So speaking of inspiration, my podcast guest this week is truly a person. You are going to love her. She is so generous and inspiring. And she and I sat down and had a really deep conversation about her gastric sleeve surgery and how even though it helped her, she lost weight with the sleeve, and she was grateful for it. She found that it wasn't enough. It wasn't the magic wand. It wasn't the solution. And she found that she really needed to start to get her mind set right. So I'm going to let her tell you in her own words. So welcome, Paula, to the Thin Thinking podcast. Hello, welcome, Paula. Thank you so much for being here today on the Thin Thinking podcast.
Hi, Rita. Thank you for having me.
As I had said in my intro, everyone, Paula is someone who is is going to talk to us today. I want to ask Paula about her journey. Have been exploring the journey of weight mastery. And Paula, everybody comes to weight mastery in different ways. And Paula came on her journey through first starting with the gastric sleeve. But Paula, I wanted to start our conversation with asking you just to kind of introduce us to you and through your, where were you struggling? How did you know when you were struggling with weight? Were you young? Were you older in your life? Like, where were you when you started your journey with weight?
So my journey with weight really didn't start being a problem until probably mid-college. I was doing a lot of dancing, so I was staying in shape. And I spent a summer at a girlfriend's house, and she was a gymnast. And she showed me that if you could eat anything you wanted as long as you got rid of it. And she taught me how to do that. And I thought, wow, this is great. So I could eat as much as I want. And then, so I had the bulimia going on. And I kept the bulimia up until I was at work. And so this was out of college, and I maintained my weight. I stopped dancing, but I was able to maintain my weight because I was bulimic. And then one day somebody said to me, I know that we know what you're doing in the bathroom. We know that you're vomiting. And I said, no, I'm not. I just have this thing. And I was working for a psychiatric hospital and I was working in the alcohol and drug program with youth. But obviously these people knew what was going on. And it shocked me so badly that I stopped. I actually was lucky that I just stopped the bulimia dead cold. But what I didn't stop was the excessive eating. And so, I went from 140, and through the years, my highest weight was 273, which is a pretty big chunk of change for somebody who is 5'2".
Right.
So I had stopped dancing like I was in college, and I kept the massive eating, the binge eating.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
How long did you, and in that time of binge eating, and after the bulimia stopped, and I totally know about bulimia because I was bulimic too. And it is a shock when people find out or confront you about it. It's so humiliating and so shameful. But for you, after you stopped and you just continued to binge, were you doing anything in that time to try to lose weight? Like, were you going on diets? Were you?
Why, yes.
Do I need to ask?
That's when I started every diet known to mankind. Oprah Winfrey's OptiFast, where I didn't eat for 3 months. I did Jenny Craig. I did Nutrisystem. I did Weight Watchers. I did the cabbage soup. And I could always lose some weight. And then when I stopped doing it, because I'd get sick of it, and then I'd gain it back. And then after a while, it was such a struggle. It was it was a struggle.
Right.
Yeah, I tried every diet and diet pills too. Tried those too.
Yeah.
And ended up with a heart murmur because, if you take fen-phen for too long, and it was legal then, many people ended up with a heart murmur. And I did. So.
Oh, wow. Do you still have one, or is it?
I do.
Wow.
It's not a problem. And when I tell doctors how I got it, they don't seem very alarmed, but it's something that's still there.
Wow. So tell us then what sort of transitioned you? At what point did you start considering gastric sleeve? Like, how did you hear about it? What kind of popped that into your mind?
I met a woman who I met her I'll never forget, I met her in a restroom, and she was looking really pretty. And I said, gosh, you look beautiful. She goes, I just lost X number of pounds. And I said, oh my God, how did you do that? Oh, I had weight loss surgery, and it made a big difference in my life. And, I'm so happy. And so I lived with that for several years, always thinking about it. And then I just got to a point where I just was so disgusted, so fed up, so immobile, so unhappy that I talked to my husband about it, who said, I love you as you are. You don't need it. But he agreed to support me in it. And so I went and had a gastric sleeve about, probably about 7 years ago, I guess.
Right.
7 or 8 years ago.
And for our listeners who, because often when people struggle, especially with excessive amounts of weight, doctors will recommend surgery, of course.
Yes.
I don't know if a doctor ever recommended surgery to you.
Yes, mine did.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what made you differentiate or decide between like a gastric bypass and a gastric sleeve? And maybe you can tell us the difference between the two.
Right. Actually, at the time, the gastric bypass wasn't around much, didn't hear much about it, but there was something else. I can't remember what it was. It was a band. So actually,
right.
choices were the gastric band or the gastric sleeve. And from what I learned, I thought that the band wasn't going to be significant enough. And the bypass wasn't very popular or well known when I did it. And so, I met all the criteria. I went to you have to go through a lot of tests and psychologist and all that stuff. And I was deemed to be a good candidate. And frankly, I thought I was a good candidate for the gastric sleeve. The gastric bypass is more significant. People lose weight a lot faster and usually a lot more, but there are more significant side effects with that. There's a dumping syndrome where if you eat too much, you have raging diarrhea or you're vomiting, or and also that your nutritional needs have to be really paid attention to because you're taking in so few vitamins and minerals. So for me, the gastric sleeve was really reducing the size of my stomach to, I don't know, I guess the size of your fist is what it turns out to be. It's pretty small, but it didn't have the nutritional repercussions. I mean, I still needed and continue to take vitamins, but it didn't have the dumping syndrome, and I never experienced any of that.
Oh,
so that was, for me, it was a good choice.
So, and tell us about that experience of, what happened afterwards, after going through the surgery and the recovery, and then the, time after.
Okay. So immediately after surgery, you can't eat anything. You're on a very soft diet for about a month. And then slowly you start to introduce other things. And during this time, I think I had such euphoria. I mean, they call it the honeymoon period for a reason, is that you can lose weight very easily. You have no desire to eat. Plus, you don't have much room to eat. Right. And so it was easy to drop almost 70 pounds pretty easily.
Wow.
Yeah. In the first 6 to 8 months. Unfortunately, then the honeymoon is over.
Right. I was going to ask you in that time that you were releasing, or even prior to having the surgery, did you consider all your mindset around food, or was it just,
nope,
let's get that weight off and everything will be okay?
Yes. Let's get that weight off. Once you lose that weight, I really believe that I would have the mindset to continue on, that I would only eat small portions, and that wouldn't be a problem for me, that I would continue to lose. And I didn't consider the ramifications of my brain saying, yeah, no, I'm not doing this anymore.
So when you were in this weight loss phase, the honeymoon phase, I would call it. Were you in any other groups of people going through the same thing as you? And are you aware of like what might be coming up down the road for you as far as like the end of the honeymoon, or were you kind of not in a group at that point?
I did join a group. The doctor that I had worked with has a group and still has a group. And the people talked mostly about their eating and not at all about the mindset. And they talked about low calorie recipes and eating the right foods. And And then there were also people in that group that had gained back a significant amount of weight. It was kind of like AA for people with food issues. And so people came and talked about that, they gained 40 pounds back or they gained 50 pounds back, but they still want to lose again. And after a while, it just didn't feel like I was getting much out of it. I didn't see a lot of success. The nutritionist who led the program was very enthusiastic, but didn't have a lot of answers other than here are the right vitamins you should be taking. Oh, and people from different pharmaceuticals came and said, oh, you should be drinking this particular shake in the morning. And so they plugged their shake, or this particular vitamin. And of course, everything was very expensive. And after a while, I wasn't getting anything out of it. And I just stopped going.
And so you kind of tuned that out.
I tuned it.
What was it like I at one point, I remember I spoke at UCLA to a group of people who had gone, I think I mentioned this to you earlier, but through bariatric surgery. And it was so fascinating to me because there were the people who were on the honeymoon, and there was just like no denying their elation and freedom, because when you are in that much pain around your weight and that struggle, to have that lifted so quickly, not quickly, but not without pain. Quickly.
Yes.
But just, it's almost like a magic pill, right? It is the wave of the wand.
Exactly. And I thought that I would ride that wave until I became a size 2.
Right. And then the shock and horror that I heard from these other people who, oh, well, then the honeymoon ended. And not only the fact that, because I don't know enough about it to speak to this like a professional with regards to any level of expertise, but it just seems like what happens is we turn that disappointment not on the process, how the process has perhaps failed them, but that they failed themselves.
Yes. I felt like a huge disappointment to myself. I really felt that I was going to be able to continue. The problem for me is that although I was eating mostly protein shakes and very little food, is that my love for food and excessive amounts of food really went on a back burner. And I had thought that it was gone. And yet after 6 months of drinking shakes and eating very little, it wasn't gone. It still was there in the back of my mind saying, this would really taste good, or why don't you eat that? Or, you've had the surgery, so you probably lose it. And so then, here I am after the gastric sleeve surgery, and now I'm feeling like a big failure because I'm not remotely close to a goal weight or a weight where I feel comfortable.
So you released a significant amount of weight, but you still had more weight.
I still had, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I probably had another 60 pounds to go.
Okay. And so there was a transitional period where it went from being able to manage your drinks and the proteins and all that. And then
you're sick of them.
And then slowly the other foods started to come back.
Right. And the fast food started calling my name again. And, and I would be busy spending a lot of my day in my brain planning on what I was going to eat, when I was going to eat it, how I would hide the food from my husband, because, I didn't want him to know, although obviously he guessed it because I wasn't losing weight. Hiding food from my husband, or not eating those fat foods and only eating salads in front of him. So there was not only the shame, but then, I have the secret, and psychologically it was very, very awful.
Yeah.
It was very painful.
Yeah. Well, then what made you how did you turn that around? Like what made you seek out something else? What made you decide, okay, I've got to do something else?
Yeah. My cousin had decided that she needed to do weight loss surgery. So she went ahead and had the gastric bypass, which of course you lose a lot more and you lose a lot faster. And she looked great, and she was touting it. And she said, why don't you go back? I know you're not happy. Why don't you go back and get the gastric bypass, and you'll lose the weight that you need to lose, and you'll feel great. And I just knew in my heart that it wasn't about the surgery. It wasn't about making my small stomach non-existent. It wasn't about more surgery is going to keep me on the straight and narrow. I just knew that what was keeping me overweight wasn't the size of my stomach. It was my brain. And my brain still was participating in eating food and thinking about food. And I just, I was starting to feel desperate. And I thought, maybe that is my only way, except I've already been that way before. I've done that before. And unless I tackle my brain, which is the source of my evil and source of my weakness and all my challenges around food, unless I tackled my brain, I wasn't going to make any progress.
Right.
So as luck would have it, my niece had gone through this smoking cessation program with you.
Mm-hmm.
And she had been smoke-free for 6 months. Oh my gosh, how did you do that? Oh, well, I went to this woman, Rita, and she did this, and I haven't smoked and I don't want to smoke. And I said, does she have anything for weight loss? I don't know, Auntie. Well, she did. Thank goodness. And so that's how I found my way to you. And it just happened that you were just starting another session, like in a few days. And I just thought, the money that I was going to spend, I thought, oh, that's a chunk of change. And I thought, you spend that money on fast food in a week and a half. Come on.
Yeah.
When I think about the money that I spent, and not even the emotional pain and emotional weight and all what that was costing me. But I just thought, you spend that on fast food, for heaven's sakes.
Right.
In less than a month, you've spent, all that money. And what, I'm just going to, I'm giving this a try. If it worked for Alexis for smoking, that's pretty hard. I'm going to give this a try. And here I am.
So how did you, how did your process, your shift process, help you start to put things together for yourself? Like I know like it was hypnosis. So had you ever done any sort of hypnosis before?
I had not.
Okay.
No. And there were times, especially in the beginning, where I would be laying in my bed saying to myself, I'm not being hypnotized. None of this is working. But, I said that I'm going to do it. I can do 10 minutes of listening to this. And I got all the particulars that, the food diary to keep up and all the other booklets that came with it. And I just thought, what, I'm doing this. I'm jumping in both feet. I'm doing it. And even though for the longest time, I said this hypnosis is not working, what I realized was that my thoughts around food and my thoughts around myself and how I was approaching all this was starting to change. And I don't like keeping a food diary. I didn't enjoy it. And I thought, that's not doing it. But at least I got to see what I was doing. But it was that continual hypnosis when I kept saying, this isn't working. Yes, it was working on a subconscious level. It made a big difference. And so I really felt good that it was tackling what I knew in my heart needed to be tackled. And that was my brain. Right. And all the things that went with it, the shame, the anger, and the denial, and So this checked all the boxes, plus the amount of support that you gave people that were going through the program. Right. That was huge.
Right. I think one of the things that you're touching upon that, comes is the release from shame, because I think,
yes.
Is one thing that we do in the shift. And I think that we were talking about this in a way before we turned on record, was that we see ourselves in a particular way. And when we struggle with our weight, we see ourselves as a struggler. We see ourselves as somebody, and again, I would imagine even like when I was bulimic, I saw myself as a bulimic and a binger. And, like I'd
Right.
have all these terms that defined me to myself that kept me in a box. And I would
Yes.
imagine, and I'm curious, like that self identity of even somebody who went through surgery, if that somehow, I mean, even though the surgery itself in a way set you free, at least for a
It
while,
did. It was a good jump start for me.
yeah, and not naysaying the surgery at all, because I know it saves many people's lives. Like it can really be an asset, but it's not necessarily a complete cure.
See, that I think the problem is I do not regret doing the surgery. What I regret is that there wasn't a brain component. There was a nutrition component. There
Yeah,
was a go exercise component, but nobody said, this is what you're going to have to think about. Here are some new ways. Here's the coach that says, here's the rebel, and here's the critic that are going to try to sabotage you. Here is the coach that can actually help you and help you stop being so hard on yourself and critical.
yeah.
And that has really been invaluable.
Yeah. So what Paula's talking about, for those of you who have not done the shift or read the book or anything, is that, when we struggle with our weight, we really want to develop a self-identity of I'm a struggler. And we really try to open that up and get people out of that struggle identity as an apprentice, like really starting to see themselves with a different identity of somebody who's learning a
Yes.
skill set, which is the skills of weight mastery, rather than like somebody who's depriving themselves and like, sort of like a social
And the
reject.
willpower getting your way through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this isn't about that.
And then the inner voices that we accumulate, not only in the area of weight, but in our life, where we have this inner critic who is always the perfectionist, always holding us to super high standards, as we were talking about before we turned on the record, and shames us and makes us feel bad.
Yeah.
And then we've got this rebel who's like, screw it, this is too hard. Let's go get
Start
the
on
fast
Monday.
food. Start again on Monday.
On Monday. Or I just, all right, I'll eat this bag of chips and then I'll stop.
Yeah. And then let me finish it up, get it out
Let
of the house.
Or on Monday. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, let me just finish that bag of chips and get it out of the house. And then, but what Paula's talking about, the inner coach, is really being able, because you do have a powerful voice within you, to be
That can be
rational
kind
and
and
reasonable.
encouraging, and
And that is, especially, I think we're so vulnerable. I could just imagine how vulnerable somebody is whose body is completely changed in a few months period. And I wonder in those groups, Paula, if people like lost so much weight, they just didn't know what to do. Like it was such a rapid change of identity that they didn't have a context to hold that in. Because like sometimes I hear these stories about people who like start self-numbing because they can't.
yes,
They'll numb
they
with
start
alcohol.
drinking.
Yeah.
Some of them were starting to drink. That their drug of choice was food, and when it wasn't food, they went to alcohol. And if it wasn't alcohol, they went to other activities, and people talked about those issues.
Yeah.
And that alcoholism seemed to be a pretty big topic for a lot of those people. And that was kind of scary to me. I never had any real interest in alcohol, but I thought, great, I'm going to trade one horrible thing for something. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
So I mean, like now here you are, and like, what do you feel like is your continuing journey for you as far as, loving yourself and getting, I know you and I, before we turned on record, we're talking about exercise and reconnecting. Like what for you do you think you learned from this journey with regards to the gastric? Like what I'm trying to look for, what am I asking you, Paula? I'm like all over the place. I guess I'm asking you, like, if somebody was listening to you and thinking, wow, I'm either considering the gastric sleeve, and that might make or like, should I still do it or should I not? Like, what would be your recommendation for them? Like, how would you tell them to proceed for themselves?
If there was a health issue that they really needed to lose some weight pretty fast, or, for me, I had a big amount of weight to lose. And so I don't regret it. What I do regret is going into it thinking that this was going to be the answer. This was going to be the cure. This was going to keep me from being embarrassed about myself. This was going to keep me from being so critical about myself. I mean, I didn't have those thoughts, but I think that was the package that I was hoping for. And they are separate entities, and they are separate things that I needed and continue to need to work on. And I think if somebody's going into it, they need to be aware that the weight loss and the nutrition, while it's all important, I don't think it's the biggest thing. I think your brain and how you treat yourself and how you look upon this complete journey is what's really going to make you a success in the long run. It's going to make you feel good about yourself in the long run. And I think it's unwise to go into it thinking this is going to be the panacea. This is going to be my cure. I'm going to lose weight. I'll keep it off for the rest of my life because my stomach's so small. By the way, the size of my stomach, I don't think has increased, but as I was able to eat, it didn't matter to me that my stomach hurt. It didn't hurt that much. So I would continue to eat, and I ate large quantities. And since I've been doing this, I believe that my pouch, my stomach, has shrunk back down to the size it needed to be after the surgery. And also what you have been talking about, which has been so important to me, is the mindful eating, like really taking my time, which is not very hard, and thinking about it after each bite, after, maybe after 3 bites. Am I full? Have I had enough? Have I had enough? Have I had enough? And I find that if I ask myself that question, it's real easy to say you've had enough. And for me, after the surgery, and I still have it now, once I've had enough and I wait a couple minutes, I have one hiccup.
Oh, interesting.
Telltale sign, I always have a hiccup. And anything after that, I shouldn't be eating. I'm full. I'm done. I've had enough.
That's so fascinating. There is an actual breath that the human body takes when it has had just enough. And it's kind of a big sigh.
Yes.
But a lot of us will just go, okay, now I'm going to just keep on eating. Like we'll have that.
It didn't matter to me. And it didn't matter even, how awful does this sound? It didn't matter that my little pouch was getting stretched out and that it hurt. It didn't hurt that much. It didn't hurt as much as, 2 more scoops of ice cream. It didn't hurt as much as eating that bag of potato chips. It did. And so as a result of this program and being mindful about how much I'm eating, not even paying, in the beginning, just paying attention to how much am I eating and have I had enough? And now, and I know that the size of my pouch has shrunk back down to its post-surgery size. When I've had enough, I can't deny it in my brain. It's like your stomach feels full. You have had enough. You can stop now. This is the time. Stop now. Oh. And it's powerful, and it has kept me, if nothing else, that has been such a huge help to me in releasing weight. I've had enough. I can stop.
Right.
And I do stop. How about that?
That is amazing.
I actually stopped. It was amazing. The little side note is that people notice that you've stopped. And so when I'm out to dinner, the waiter stops by and says, "Oh, you didn't like your meal. Can I get you something else?" The people around you are finishing up their meals, and they're looking at you and saying, Don't you want to eat some more? You can't be finished yet. And these are even people that know that I've been trying to release weight, but it makes them uncomfortable.
Yes.
And so what I have learned to say is, I just feel better if I eat until I'm satisfied. And I really start to feel uncomfortable if I eat more than that. I loved this food. It was delicious. But, I'm done. Please go ahead and, eat your meal.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That is such a gift to other people when they're in those situations, because yes, you're absolutely right. You're
And it's going to happen.
stopping.
It's
Yeah.
going to happen. Somebody's going to say something to you,
Yeah.
and you think they'd be supportive and go, wow, that's all you need to eat. No, that's not what they're saying.
No,
It's
they want you to release them from their own guilt.
right. And
They
then
don't.
they make comments about their own. Oh, look, I ate everything on my plate. How awful. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, don't look at me for judgment.
Yeah.
I'm the last
Yeah.
person who's going to judge what you eat.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, this has been so great. So is
Well,
there anything else? Like, I know because you've been out a few times socially, like any other advice you have for people socially? Because I know you've been managing people, like you've had to manage a number of situations, right?
I have. One of the things for me that helped, you had an alcohol-free week or something. And it just made me think, not that I drank a lot of alcohol, but do I want to waste my calories on alcohol? Do I really want to do
Right.
that? And I decided that I didn't. And what I liked instead was club soda with a little bit of cranberry juice. And it makes people think you have a cocktail so that they feel better.
Yeah.
And so my cocktail intake, which was very low before, but it's pretty non-existent. It's not that I'm opposed to it, but for me, I just don't want to waste the calories on it. And the 3-bite rule, which I ran into the other day, I was at an appreciation luncheon. They had these beautiful bundt cakes for each of us. And it was the 3-bite rule that I find that if I eat the first one and I enjoy it, and then I take the second bite and it's really good, I find by the third bite, if I'm mindful, that that's enough.
Yeah.
I don't need the rest of it.
That's right. That's the 3-bite rule is
That,
what.
oh, that's such a good one. And it's easy. It's been easy for me. It's very easy. And
Yeah.
also it looks like, oh, you're having dessert with us. And usually there's somebody at the table that says, I'll finish that if you don't want it. Okay.
Yeah.
Be
It
my
is.
guest.
It is. It's so good. Just
It
for
is a
those
good
of
one.
listeners who don't know what the 3-bite rule is, like the idea is that after 3 bites, most foods in your mouth, they go from like 90% satisfaction to 20%. Your mouth just gets desensitized. So
Right.
after that point, you're not really paying attention to the food. You're not really even enjoying it anymore.
Nope.
So you can
And
enjoy it
especially with
fully.
dessert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially
Dessert.
I think for me for desserts.
Yeah,
So
or really decadent side dish or something like
yes.
macaroni and cheese or French
Yep.
fries or something like that.
And so through this, I don't feel like I am depriving myself. I feel I can have whatever I want. Of course, the things that I want are a lot healthier for me now. The
Yeah.
things that I want fit within my calorie budget. And the things that I want are a lot more protein, and the junk food that I had in the house, it's just not in my neighborhood anymore. I just don't bring it home.
Good
No,
for
no
you.
sense bringing the tiger into the cage and then you got to take it out. No,
No,
it's just
that's
out of my house.
I
But I can
love
do that because I'm alone.
yeah. Well, I
It
love
makes
that
it easier.
metaphor. It's so good. I mean, because that is such a downfall for a lot of people is it ends up in their house again. And
Yeah.
like, why is it there? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Now you have to have a
Exactly.
relationship with it. The tiger.
With alcohol and drugs, you can stop and never go back to them. But
Yeah.
with food, you have to take the tiger out of the cage at least a couple of times a day. You have to manage it. It's not like you can say, okay, I'm never going to eat again as long as I live, like you can with alcohol or drugs or
Yeah.
so it's definitely a management issue, but it can be managed.
It absolutely can. And yeah, our
And
trigger foods are things that we
yeah,
respectfully just don't need to have a relationship with, but
nope,
there's a lot of yummy, amazing food out in the world we can enjoy
yes. Hmm.
in
And
moderation.
people on your Facebook page are really lovely about sharing things they come across that are delicious and things that can be prepared pretty easily. They're just so generous on that
Yeah,
Facebook.
they are. It's a great group.
They're
I
very
agree.
generous and very kind and
Right.
never critical.
Yeah.
It's a very safe place.
Yeah, it is. It's a lovely environment and you make it lovely too, Paula. I can't thank you
Thank
enough
you.
for sharing your journey with us and being so vulnerable. I really appreciate everything that you've done and what a journey it's been. I mean, you've released
Oh,
40 pounds since I
Yeah.
mean, you've released so much weight, and you look amazing. And I know you're still working on yourself and working on your
Mhm.
journey, but you've
Going from
so
a three,
far.
going from a 3X to a size 12, that's significant for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's good for you. It's been such a transformation.
And I just appreciate all the help and support and encouragement, not only from the people that are in the shift process, but from you. I thank you so much.
Oh,
It has been life changing.
well, thank
It has been
you.
life changing.
Right. Well, you are an angel in many, many ways. So thank you, Paula.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much, Paula. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in this week. I really, really appreciate you. And again, please subscribe so that you will always get a little thin thinking and little love sent your way every week. And check out the show notes for those nice freebies I've gotten there. Sugar hypnosis is free. And a video coaching series called the 3 mental shifts to end the weight struggle once and for all. They're there, they're free, they're really great tools for you. So go grab them, and I hope you enjoy them. And happy June! I hope you have an amazing week. And remember that the key, and probably the only key to unlocking the door of the weight struggle, is inside you. So keep listening and find it. Thanks for listening to the Thin Thinking Podcast. Did that episode go by way too fast for you? If so, and you want to dive deeper into the mindset of long-term weight release, head on over to www.shiftweightmastery.com. That's www.shiftweightmastery.com, where you'll find numerous tools and resources to help you unlock your mind for permanent weight release, tips, strategies, and more. And be sure to check the show notes to learn more about my book, From Fat to Thin Thinking, Unlock Your Mind for Permanent Weight Loss, and to learn how to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode.